Everybody a very happy new year. Lovely to see you all back. Can I also remind everyone to make sure that their computers are on mute. I'm Councillor Lynn Doherty, the leader of West Berkshire Council, and I'd like to welcome everybody to this evening's executive meeting. This meeting is being held in the council chamber and over Zoom. Joining me in person are the members of the executive, Councillors Steve Arderwater, Dominic Bowick, Graham Bridgman, Ross McKinnon, Tom Marino, Joe Stewart and Howard Wollaston. Members of the shadow executive attending in person are Councillors Lee Dillon, Adrian Abbs, Jeff Brooks and Eric Pattenden. Other members of the council who are also in attendance remotely can ask questions on any items included on the agenda. Members who are not on the executive and are not able to vote on any of the agenda items, please note the voting will take place at this meeting by show of hands. The officers in attendance include the Chief Executive Nigel Lynn and Executive Directors Joseph Holmes, Eric Owens and Andy Sharp. Sarah Clark will be the legal advisor to the meeting, and I am assisted by Sadie Owen, the clerk to the meeting, and Lizzie Reeves, who is acting as our Zoom host. We'll go straight to item 1, which is apologies. Now, I have had apologies from Councillor Richard Sumner. Do we have any other apologies?
No other apologies.
Thank you, Sadie. Can we therefore move to item 2 on this evening's agenda, which is the minutes of our previous meeting? Can I ask, is everybody happy to accept the previous meetings as the previous minutes as an accurate record of the meeting held on the 15th of December 2022? They were in your pack. I'm happy to propose that they were. Does that find a seconder?
Does indeed, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Bridgman. No comments, no hands going up on those minutes. Therefore, can I please ask members of the executive to vote by raising their hand if they agree that the minutes can be signed as a true and accurate record of the previous meeting?
I confirm they have been approved, Leader.
Thank you. Therefore, I am happy to sign these minutes. Can we move on to item 3 on this evening's agenda, which is the declarations of interest? Does anybody have any declarations of interest that they would like to make? I see no hands, in which case I'll move on to item 4, which is our public questions. Firstly, I'd like to thank all of the members of the public that have submitted questions for this evening's executive meeting, and welcome those of you in attendance via in person or via Zoom to hear the answers to your questions and ask a supplementary question if you have one. For those public questioners unable to join this meeting, I can confirm that you will receive a written response to your questions within 5 clear working days of the meeting. Unfortunately, in the absence of the portfolio holder for planning, transport and countryside, written responses will be provided to public questions A, E and F, again within 5 working days. Your question will appear on screen and will be answered by the relevant portfolio holder. You will then be given the opportunity to ask a supplementary question. But please remember that this must be to clarify the response provided and not to introduce any new business. In accordance with paragraph 5.12.9 of the Constitution, where questions have more than one question, only their first question will be answered. If, after all other first questions have been asked and answered, and there is sufficient time, we will answer subsequent questions. Please note that the time limit for public questions is restricted to 30 minutes. And if your questions have not been answered in that time, you will receive a written response within 5 clear working days of the meeting. The responses given, either verbally at the meeting or in writing, will be published on the Council's website in due course. Can I please therefore invite Councillor Ross McKinnon to answer Mr. John Goatley's question B on the agenda?
Yeah, thanks very much, Leader, and good evening, Mr. Goatley. The Council has a role as landowner of the LRIE and also a role as the local planning authority, which would hear any planning application brought forward. The Council's drainage officers might be required to comment on such an application, And as such, that could lead to a perceived conflict of interest if those same officers were to comment on an application in whose preparation they had been involved. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, just a slight one. I think there's a sort of presupposition there, but by bringing in consultants, it's recognised that the drainage is going to cause a lot of problems on London Road Industrial Estate. And using your own figures from the Everson Young environmental report suggests that figures such as several acres, probably 2, 3, 4 acres, will be needed for infrastructure. Can you say where that's going to come from?
No, I think the drainage requirements for any application that comes forward will have to be dealt with as part of that application when it comes to pass.
Thank you both. Can we therefore move to question C on this evening's agenda, which is Mr. Alan Pearce to Councillor Ross McKinnon.
Hello, Ms Pearce, and thanks for your question. Any supplementary planning document will be developed in partnership with stakeholders with adoption by end of 2024, subject to statutory planning processes, which do include the local plan review. There's no reason why planning applications should not come forward in any sites within the estate before then, since appropriate assessment of flood risk is carried out as part of the statutory planning process by the local planning authority. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, I don't quite understand why you wouldn't do an SPD first. Why wouldn't you start that as a baseline? But perhaps you just clarify me if you could. My understanding is that if you can't develop the London Road on a piecemeal basis, it will have to go back to the executive for, say, a new refresh. That is policy. In other words, the refresh policy is council policy at the moment.
Yeah, I can confirm that the refresh policy decided in June last year remains current policy.
And if it's not possible to develop on a plot by plot basis, it will have to go back to the executive.
We would need to take advice on what would need to be done to deal with that as and when it happened, but I wouldn't like to say for certain right now.
Thank you. Thank you for the answer.
Thank you both. And then can we go to item H on this evening's agenda? I believe Mr. Pike is virtually present, and therefore can Councillor Howard Wollaston answer Mr. Pike's question.
Thank you for your question, Mr. Pike. The council has made and continues to make significant investment into the leisure and cultural facilities in Thatcham. Specifically, Hennick Sports Pavilion, over £75,000, and a master plan exercise will be commissioned to examine ways of getting maximum usage at the overall site. And this council has already indicated a willingness to provide financial support within its play and pitch strategy. Thatcham Library, an interim refurbishment, including a new entrance and accessible WC, is due to commence imminently at a cost of over £60,000 once the contractor has been appointed. The Thatcham master plan currently underway is expected to include the provision of a new and larger library in Thatcham, as outlined in the council's infrastructure development plan 2022-27, at an estimated cost of £1.2 million. Thatcham Nature Discovery has a completely new interpretation space with exhibits to tell visitors about the fascinating history and wildlife of the Kennet Valley, the canal and reed beds at a cost of £125,000 from this council. Thatcham Memorial Foundation Jubilee Playground, installation of playground and recreational equipment at a cost of £75,000. And finally, the Kennet Leisure Centre has £200,000 allocated from the capital budget in 2024-25 for refurbishment works. I would stress that Newbury Leisure Park is privately owned and since 2012 has undergone at least one refurbishment, but unfortunately due to a variety of reasons, including COVID-19, has ceased trading and is currently up for sale by the owners. During the pandemic, the council provided grant financial support to the occupiers of Newbury Leisure Park under the statutory COVID-19 local restrictions support grant. These grants were paid to all rate-paying businesses that were forced to close as a result of government restrictions. However, given financial constraints and extensive other commitments in the leisure strategy, the Newbury Leisure Park is not something that we could contemplate becoming involved in. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, thank you. So I think you actually answered both of the questions, and I missed the first part of the answer because you lose about 10 seconds when you're promoted to panelist. Yeah, so if it's not appropriate for the council to provide support to a private business like the leisure park, why did the local plan in 2012 give a commitment effectively that it would be expanded when the council is outside of the ability of the council to achieve that.
I actually don't think that clarifies the question going back to 2012. I'm not sure that
Well,
councillors can be expected to answer that. I'm just taking one of the items.
The area of plan policy that I'm referring to is from 2012. It is part of the local plan for 2012, which was referenced in my first question.
Okay, I've been advised that can stand, Councillor Wollaston. However, you do have Eric here, should you require his assistance, or you can give a written response.
Could I suggest a written response, because it's going back beyond, I think the horizon.
What he wants to do.
I was going to say, I'm afraid I wasn't a councillor in 2012, and I would rather come back with a written response.
Okay.
And I'd be happy with that. Thank you.
Okay, we will provide you with a written response, Mr. Pike. Therefore, that concludes all of this evening's questions. Can we move to item 5 on the agenda, which is petitions? I'm not aware that any petitions have been requested to be handed in. Oh, I am now. Councillor Dillon.
I was going to stand then, as it's like full council. So I have a petition to submit called Save the Ready Bus. The name is enclosed. Call on the administration of West Berkshire Council to review their decision on funding of the Ready Bus service, making sure that this important community service remains available for those who need it when they need it for the long term. And that has been signed by 1,208 people.
Thank you, Councillor Dillon. And my understanding is we will take that away and then we will come back to you in due course once that petition has been verified with the next steps.
Thank you very much.
Can we move therefore to item 6 on this evening's agenda? Item 6 is the draft council strategy for 2023 to 2027. It's actually, I'm going to present this report, but before I do so, can I ask, does the report find a seconder?
Does, Leader, and I reserve my rights.
Okay, thank you. So the report before you, as we come towards the end of our existing council strategy, building on our strengths, our focus turns to the journey ahead of us and the continued role of West Berkshire Council and the continued role that West Berkshire Council will play in supporting the residents of West Berkshire. As leader, I'm proud of all that has been achieved by the delivery of the current strategy and the additional work outside of that strategy that has also been undertaken, examples of which can be seen as case studies within the draft plan. I am keen that this work continues to benefit to the benefit of all residents of West Berkshire. Therefore, this evening, I am pleased to bring forward the draft council strategy for 2023 to 27. This is a business planning document that sets out the council's future priorities and objectives. It has been written following extensive evidence reviews, resident feedback and stakeholder engagement, as laid out in the supporting report at section 5.5. It identifies 5 priority areas: providing opportunities for all and more help when you need it, protecting and enhancing our environment, stronger communities, great place to live, learn and do business, building public services for the future. These areas will ensure that we have a plan that addresses the district's needs over the coming years. Tonight, I'm asking that the draft plan is approved and put out to consultation so that everybody in the district has the opportunity to review it and feedback. A 6-week consultation will be widely publicised with a media campaign that will include press releases, social media posts, including promoted posts spread across the 6 weeks, visits to local areas such as the Edge Cafe, posters and screen displays for corporate buildings, emails out to the consultation panel, newsletter features, videos, and possible Facebook Lives. Following this and any resulting alterations, the strategy will then be presented to full council in May. I would ask that everybody supports this evening and welcome any questions. I'm going to come to my left first of all. Any questions from members of the executive? Councillor Bridgman, are you reserving your rights?
I did say I was going to.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Wollaston, can I just ask you to turn off your mic?
I apologize.
Thank you. Councillor Dillon.
Apology, could you call Councillor Brooks first? Just it's one question, I've got multiple.
Councillor Brooks.
Thank you. We're puzzled why it's not subject to calling. The calling rules seem very opaque. So what's the urgency of this, that it could not be called in to be looked at? And in fact, it could have come to the Scrutiny Commission ahead of this meeting, which is another practice that has been encouraged, including by the Commission Chairman.
Thank you. As far as subject to calling is concerned, I'll go to the monitoring officer first, but certainly the timetable enables this to come forward to the first May council of the new administration. So we get the 6 weeks consultation period to enable people to do the feedback and have that in place, ready for the start of the next administration.
Yeah, I can confirm it is not subject to calling because the proposals are subject to council approval. So it is not an executive decision to adopt the new strategy. It is a council decision, and therefore it's outside the calling.
Councillor Dillon.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. So it's interesting in the body of the report, it talks about this being in sync with the electoral cycle. But obviously your administration has written this draft and it has the themes in it, which your administration have signed off on. And so whilst we are happy and we could agree with quite a few of the core aspects in terms of excellent educational facilities, for example, we feel that actually it would be better to go out to consultation on this when we have a new administration, when we know what the council makeup is, when we know what councillors are on the new body, consult over the summer and then approve it in the autumn so that the new administration doesn't have to, for example, go back out and decide that they may want different priority areas. So we feel the timing should be pushed back into after the election, so it sits in that side of the electoral cycle, not before. I was very keen to hear how widely promoted it's going to be, and I welcome that. That feels more than the publication and the communication strategy that we had around Regulation 18 of the local plan, and certainly any communication that's come out so far in relation to Regulation 19. And obviously the local plan affects the district for 30 years, not just 4. So I hope that some of that learning may be put into the Regulation 19 consultation, and that gets as bigger publicity as you're intending to give this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dillon. Quite simply, in fact, I think I'm going to quote Benjamin Franklin: failing to plan is planning to fail. And actually this administration has never done that. It's done this process all the way through. And actually back in 2019, I can remember almost an identical conversation from yourself whereby we were quite clear that we needed to make sure that this council has a strategy in place without gaps, that manages its resources effectively, can set the direction of services to work together and follow, and actually is evidence-based and resident-based at this moment in time. So I'm very happy with the timetable, and we certainly feel that having a plan in place is a critical part of making sure that we move forward succinctly, regardless of which administration, in the best interest of the residents of West Berkshire. With regards to the promotion, we will be promoting it widely, and I know that as regards to the Reg 18 and Reg 19, there is also further communications planned that will be echoing a lot of what's going on with the local plan, because we try to, from a comms perspective, from the strategy perspective, make sure everybody is widely consulted where we possibly can. I see no other hands. Therefore, can I go to Councillor Bridgman?
Thank you, Leader. I won't say very much. I think it's ambitious and I welcome that. I think that we need to consult our residents on it, and I look forward to that engagement. There's a lot of good stuff in here. Clearly, we know if the last 4 years have taught us anything, it's taught us that things change and you have to adjust your plans to suit. So we reflect that whatever we set out to do may be affected by the winds of change. But we need to, as you quite rightly say, we need to plan. We need to start with a plan. And I welcome the document and I'm very happy to second the proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Bridgman. The recommendation executive is before you that we put this draft strategy out to consultation and we approve its content. Can I see a show of hands from all those in the executive if they're in favour of the proposals?
Thank you, Leader. I can confirm that that has been carried.
Thank you, everybody. We can move forward to item 7, which is me again. So it's the West Berkshire Council Customer Charter. I will be introducing this report. Does that find a seconder?
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Arderwater. Members, the document before you outlines how West Berkshire Council promises to work with its customers' residents. Our customer charter explains what you can expect from us and what our responsibilities are in return, and what you can expect from us and what your responsibilities are in turn. I think it's important that we have a charter as a key tool that can help us to improve our residents' experience when interacting with the council. It provides us with a set of written promises outlining the standards that we intend to uphold whenever and wherever we are dealing with our residents. Such a charter is a valuable tool for instilling confidence and trust with our residents and promoting a commitment to a mutually beneficial relationship between us as the council and them as residents. It will create a common standard across the council for all staff in how they do business and provide them with the guidance that puts our residents at the heart of everything that they do. It's pretty simple and self-explanatory. I'm more than happy to take any questions. But my recommendation to you this evening is that the executive accepts this draft customer charter. Does anybody have any questions? No, no, sorry, nice to see. Councillor Hunt.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I just had when looking through the chart, it occurred to me that there was no response targets in there, and what kind of happens if the council don't meet those response targets. I think what you said at the beginning and in introducing this report was very good about the expectation the residents have on the council. But it may be that I've missed them, but
I was going to say, I mean, the response targets are quite clearly there about when you'll write to us, what times we'll, if you call us, we'll respond to calls within 2 minutes. They're set out in the service charter as the appendix to that paper, Councillor Hunt.
my mistake, Leader.
Okay. Councillor Dillon.
Yeah, thank you. Apologies. Most of them do have resolutions against them, but it doesn't say what happens if that resolution time isn't fulfilled. So, what's the customer's recourse then for it to be escalated? What tracking and measurement we'll be able to see? For example, when you visit us, we'll make sure you're greeted within a minute of an arrival. How is that measured? Is someone there with a stopwatch? And then I think that the most shocking thing, I think, for me, Leader, in this document is we commit to these standards during our opening hours. But God forbid, if you've got a problem out of hours, we won't adhere to these standards. I mean, we've seen problems out of hours over the last year. Lawrence's Lane in my own ward was a particular one where we struggled to get a response from the council. And actually, I think that we should have within this customer service charter what we're holding our out of hour contractors to in terms of their speed of response on the phones, and then how quickly you should be able to get a response from an officer out of hours if you're escalating an emergency. So I think there's a missed trick there, and I think it needs to be developed further. The residents of West Berkshire live in a 24/7 world. Some of our council services operate 24/7. This isn't just about a Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 operation. So it's just some of the comments there, Leader.
Thanks, Councillor Dillon. I mean, as far as if they're not met, we've been very transparent in how to complain, and actually there's a piece on there about complaints, so that if they are not met, then there is the opportunity to complain. And I think making sure residents are aware of how to escalate through the complaints process is key, and we've put that on the charter. And actually, I've done a lot of research looking at other charters, and that is how it is dealt with regards to other customer charters.
Apologies, Leader, but it's not on this charter. This is a
When
one
dealing with
a
complaints,
one-page
comments
charter.
and compliments, we will provide you with the information there and respond within. So that would be the way that we would see the complaint system going through. And that is how lots of councils around the country deal with that, Councillor Dillon. And then the second point was we had quite a lot of conversation, and we're trying to create a charter whereby in one place we have a commitment to our residents. And we talked about this, about having it during open hours. And because we're trying to do things such as encompassing their social media, emails, if somebody emails the council at 8 o'clock on a Friday evening, the reality is they're not going to get the response and potentially until a Monday because our staff do not work there. I think the emergency out of hours situation is a completely different piece. I have no issue with highlighting an out of hours service onto this, but I don't think we can commit to some of the commitments on here 24/7 because we're not operating 24/7 in a lots of different areas, particularly around social media, because I think people access social media at all hours, and it wouldn't be reasonable to expect our staff to respond at all hours.
Is that okay just to come back on that? But without setting out that expectation to residents, how do they know that they're not going to get a response or not? I mean, there are out of our emergencies that genuinely need an escalation. And I think that in the customer charter, we should just be explaining to them, you know, what our response is really.
And we've put there around the normal hours because of the different contact ways, telephone and everything else. As I said, I've no issue putting something around an out of hours response for emergencies. And we can highlight that. I don't think that's a problem at all.
Thank you.
Councillor Bowick.
Thank you, Leader. I think we do need to be a little bit careful here. And we do have out of our services, don't we? For example, our children's services front door, which has various routes into that. We wouldn't want to make that a publicly available service. There is an out of hours service though to deal with any events that arise that are brought to us.
Yeah. And in fairness, it does say at the bottom, if you need an emergency out of hours assistance, please call 01635 42161, which is the emergency number.
I'm on about the customer standards that we adhere to out of hours, Leader. And there's nothing, basically this says we commit to these in hours,
Yes.
but we don't commit to anything out of hours to you, is what this is saying. I'm saying, I think that you have got a commitment, you've got a contract with an out of hour provider to answer your calls within a set time limit. So you could include those out of hour KPIs within this document so that residents know what level of service they expect, whether it be in hours or out of hours. And then that might reduce complaints as well.
Councillor Brooks, did you wave at me? No? Councillor Brooks?
Maybe it, you've helped answer the question, because I've said it before in this room, this chamber. There have been many occasions when I haven't felt that your members have been polite, and yet it's the first thing on here. And I wonder if Mr. Pearce and Mr. Goatley would consider the way you answer questions is polite, because I don't find it polite. So I felt the point had to be made. But maybe it's because that's outside of opening hours, so you don't have to be polite.
I think, Councillor Brooks, you're going down a different path, because I'm sure members on my side could say the exact response to you. Councillor Abbs.
Yeah, thank you very much. I don't think the chairman of the user journey group is with us this evening, Councillor Cole, but I'm sure he would back me up on this. Essentially, there's a user journey group, OSMC, and I think this has been mentioned as in the works, but it never came to that working group for any kind of review or comment, certainly in the form that I'm looking at it here this evening. And I think it may have benefited from that, especially given some of the comments I've heard from Councillor Lee Dillon. So I'm just curious as to why it didn't go that route, seeing as we absolutely have a very active user journey group going on at the moment, and it addresses a lot of the things that are meant to be going on within the charter here. So.
I think, to be honest, Councillor Abbs, this piece of work actually originates from the communication engagement strategy which I brought to executive in October 2020. It was promised then, and it's one of the things that we're keen to move through the system. So it was already there. It's not on your forward plan.
Well,
as
no, but
something that was identified, and therefore we've brought it forward today as part of that communication engagement strategy.
I understand, Leader, but I mean, the user journey groups and the fact that it was going to do this user journey as part of OSC, it has been on the agenda for a long time. That working group has been going for 6 months plus 7 months. So not to have seen this document at all in that process is really quite surprising and just a little unfortunate, because I think it would have benefited from it, is all I'm saying.
Okay.
So.
Councillor Macro.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, going back to kind of response targets, there are response targets for acknowledgements, and there's a response target for questions on social media, but I don't see any other response targets. So, if somebody sends in an email about something, and they get an acknowledgement, but then they don't hear anything for months and months and months and months. That's not acceptable. So I would have hoped that there would be some kind of interim communications with the customer, I'll call them.
I don't actually see where that's coming from, Councillor Macro, because I'm sat here reading the charter. If you mail in, we'll aim to respond in a timely manner by post dependent on the mail provider, which I think is very apt at the moment. If you email in, there'll be an automatic response, which will set out the timescales laid out to responding. We will acknowledge your email within 2 working days and confirm what will happen next. And I think it will vary depending on department, but certainly we've put there quite clearly the timescales that are expected with regards to responding.
Yeah, well, responding in a timely manner could mean anything, especially with the post at the moment. The other thing, rather more minor thing, but could we avoid acronyms, please, like GDPR? I know a lot of people would understand it, but some people won't. So when we talk about customer charter, we really need to be clear.
And I do agree with that point there, and happy to change that, Councillor Macro, because I do think we need to keep our language as simple as possible to enable everybody to understand it. So quite happy to take that point up. Councillor Ardwater, I don't see any other hands. Would you like to come in now?
Thank you, Leader. Yes, and it's just occurring to me what during these questions and our discussion that there's one paragraph of the proposal, the second paragraph. It's proposed that this charter is adopted in tandem with a concerted internal effort towards a culture whereby good customer service is seen to be the responsibility of all within the organisation. And while it's absolutely right, and I do agree the great majority of comments that elements of the one-page charter which are seen by residents and accepted and understood, it needs to be mirrored by a sort of almost a behaviour and a way of thinking among council officers. We do have an excellent culture of customer service within this council, which I think we all appreciate, and certainly residents do. But one of the valuable things I think about rolling out this is going to be the parallel work just to remind staff to train new joiners about how to adapt this one-page, very simple set of rules to a specific situation. And we heard about many, actually, I think, very valid points, for example, around out of hours and the different types of services. Each department will need to interpret this slightly differently, but the important thing is the underlying sense of doing the best that we can as a council for our residents. So that is an important point I trust we're all in agreement with, and I welcome this charter and look forward to being rolled out and both visible to residents, our customers, and to the organisation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ardwater. Members, I too welcome this charter. I think it very clearly gives us something that we can make sure our residents are aware of and we can work towards, and we can, as Councillor Ardwater says, make sure that all members and staff of West Berkshire Council are trained in and understand and can respond to. So therefore, I would commend to you the recommendation at 2.1 and ask to see a show of virtual hands if you are in favour. Physical hands, sorry.
Thank you, Leader. I can confirm that has been approved.
Thank you all. Can we move forward then to item 8 on this evening's agenda? And that is the performance report for Q2. Now, this report is to note, therefore, Councillor Tom Marino will introduce the report, and then I will invite executive members if they wish to speak to the report at all, and then open it up to questions. Over to you, Councillor Marino.
Thank you, Leader. I'll keep this brief. As set out in the report, I'm pleased that influence measures indicate that, as it has done previously, the district has continued to fare well, and in particular, the local economies remain strong. Majority of core business measures have achieved strong performance, and performance for 2022-23 has showed that despite increasing demand, the council has continued to ensure core business service delivery, whilst also managing the response to cost of living crisis, aiding refugees from countries such as Syria, Afghanistan and Ukraine. As you said, exec members will be happy to answer specific questions relating to their portfolios either tonight or in writing following the meeting if necessary.
Any questions for Councillor Marino? Councillor Bridgman.
Not a question, but a comment, because this is a matter that was raised when we looked at the last performance report and it relates to domestic abuse. There has been an increase in both recorded crime domestic abuse and non-crime domestic abuse, and I've gone clearly the recording of that is a matter for Thames Valley Police. So what we're doing is effectively reporting on what we're being told by Thames Valley Police. But there was a meeting yesterday of building communities together, looking at crime and non-crime statistics generally across the piece. Very interesting meeting and lots of data. And I had already asked Superintendent Aziz to come back with a commentary on what was going on. Because as you recall, when we looked at it last time, there is a question as to whether or not people are reporting more domestic abuse. And it's not actually more prevalent, possibly, but it's more reporting, which, and I say, and I said this in the meeting as a chairman of a neighbourhood action group, I encourage my residents to report crime because I think that's really what we need them to do. If crime is happening, it needs to be reported. But the commentary that I've had, and if you'll bear with me, I'll read this because this is the text from the superintendent. Local policing authority has been working hard to priorities, and he's particularly identified violence against women and girls, but I remind everyone that domestic abuse is not simply male to female. It can have other gender implications. With increased training to officers and scrutiny from and supervisors to improve recording of all forms of domestic crimes. There was evidence that officers were not recognising offences and therefore missing crimes being disclosed. More scrutiny is placed on the domestic risk assessment form where broader questions of the relationship are asked by attending officers. So, for example, there will be a disclosure of controlling behaviour or strangulation offences being recorded on top of the initial reported offence through improved supervision and increased awareness. The policing authority introduced an LPA domestic abuse champion approximately 10 months ago. Their role is to re-engage on an ongoing basis with victims of domestic abuse post initial report, supporting medium risk and vulnerable victims. Evidence is showing that victims feel much more supported and confident to report further incidents and crimes. And indeed, we have instances of further reports being made directly to the domestic abuse champion. This is contributing to increased confidence in reporting crimes. The LPA analyst is in the process of reviewing the Q2 data to see if we can identify the most regular request victims for support. We'll establish if we have the same number of repeat victims reporting incidents or more than previously, or if we have an increase in victims who are being repeatedly targeted. So there is a flavour to the data, and what I am assured clearly is the police are on this and looking at it. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Bridgman. That's a really useful update, so much appreciated. Any questions for Councillor Marino or any areas that you wish to raise? Councillor Pattenden.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you also, Councillor Bridgman. Those are going to be my first set of questions that you've answered. I've also got a question about table 30 in the influencer measures report, and that's talking about the number of referrals to the emotional health triage. Given the well-publicised pressures on the local CAMS service and a lot of focus on mental health problems at the moment, it seems a little bit surprising that those figures have gone down. I wondered if you've got any, if you can give us some commentary on that. Thank you.
Councillor Berwick.
Oh, thank you, Leader. I think it's an encouraging swing, and I hope it's going to continue. Of course, we did suffer, didn't we, considerable peaks as a consequence of the pandemic, and I think that's what we're seeing, the effect that we're seeing now, a return to more stable reporting.
Thank you, Councillor Berwick. Councillor Brooks.
On page 67, Leader, we see the staff turnover. We see a trend in the last 3 quarters of quite a spike. And 17% of the staff at the moment are leaving, on a churn. Now, some of that will be salaries. There is quite a challenge for talent out there, but I would not have thought all of it. Can you tell us a bit more about what's going on? Because you'll be getting feedback, I hope, through exit interviews, and though they're confidential, they'll give you information and messaging. Because if you carry on like that, you're moving up towards a quarter of your staff churning annually, and no organisation is going to be healthy with that sort of churn.
Councillor Marino, would you like to take that, or shall I go to our chief exec?
I'm happy for you to go to Nigel first, and I can clarify.
Actually, sorry, I've got our executive director for resource sat next to you. Apologies, Joseph, I didn't think.
Yeah, thanks very much, leaders. Yes, we absolutely are investigating through exit interviews, and as well as keeping that measure under certainly under review. I think post the pandemic, that absolutely has been part of the upsurge. We had, you can see there, had a little lower turnover rates, and you can see those starting to creep up. I think, there's a lot of impact through the pandemic on how people work, how people have decided to work, and where they want to work from as well. But also we've invested through new talent management staff as well to look at how we can recruit and keep, retain staff as well, because as you point out, there are some wage increases. We know we've got significant inflation impacting us, and we are seeing at points staff moving away for higher paid roles. So we're needing to put in place a range of schemes to ensure that we do retain staff wherever we can.
Thank you, Joseph. Councillor Macro.
Oh, thank you, Leader. One statistic that we used to monitor was delayed transfers of care, which is when patients are discharged from hospital, a lot of them need care packages provided by the council. That's disappeared, and I know it's stopped being monitored nationally, which seems a great shame, because at the moment we're told there are tens of thousands, or 12 or 13,000 of patients in hospital beds who are ready to be discharged nationwide. So that would be a very useful statistic to have locally, and I would ask perhaps if you could look at kind of reintroducing it on a local basis at least, so we can see how we're doing. The other thing I want to mention is the statistic about the number of West Berkshire Council provider services, adult social care services, rated as good, which is being affected by the downgrading of the Birchwood care home. First of all, so the CQC has reviewed the ratings of all our other services and care homes apart from Birchwood this month. So I wondered why they hadn't reviewed Birchwood, and I'd like some idea, please, of how confident are we the next time it's inspected it will be at least good. And the last thing is that on the exception report, it says we will shortly be introducing the electronic medication administration record system. And I wonder whether that actually been done, because I know that one of the problems at Birchwood in the past has been proper monitoring of medicine. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Macro. I'm looking towards Councillor Stewart. Councillor Stewart, would you like to take those 3 questions from Councillor Macro?
I will indeed, and may well look to left or right just to give more detail so that Councillor Macro's got a full answer. So you're absolutely right, Councillor Macro, about the delayed transfers of care. I've just had a conversation with the with Paul to my right, Paul Coe, to say we can have a look at, we do still capture some data. What we can provide, I think we need to have a look into and see how we would provide it. I think that's fair to say. So if you can leave that with us, we'll certainly see what we can do on that.
Thank you.
In terms of the CQC, the review, I don't think you can even call it that, but they've looked at, as you say quite rightly, our other care homes very recently. It's really about a very light touch. Do we need to come back in? Is there anything of concern? It's not anything other than that. It's extremely light touch. So if they have decided that they don't need to come back and do anything further, then that's a really good sign, I would say. And I hope it remains that way. And then in terms of the system that you mentioned, the EMAR, which is, as you say, is on the exception report, it's imminent. It's a piece of software. There are contracts that need to be signed, etc. But it absolutely, I'm assured, imminent to be introduced. And we're ready to go as soon as all of that's done.
Thank you. And how confident are you that Birchwood will be upgraded next time the CQC review it?
I couldn't possibly commit to anything, Councillor Macro. You tried to catch me at the last one as well. I think what I can say is, and I think I have said it before, but I will definitely reiterate the huge amount of work that the staff are doing, and hopefully you hear about this in the briefings that you receive as well. The commitment, one of the really positive things that we've just done is we have recruited and confirmed a permanent registered manager in Birchwood who has already been doing some amazing work and comes from a care quality background. She's already been leading a lot of that work and will continue to do so. And I'm led to believe that the team themselves were absolutely thrilled that she had been put in as in that permanent position. So there is consistency, there is some comfort and reassurance amongst the staff themselves, because that's very important. And that was one of the leadership was one of those areas where we really suffered in Birchwood. So I think that's extremely important. I'm very happy at other executives, other points in time to bring forward, if it would be useful, updates on progress that's been made, etc. I do agree. You mentioned about the fact that our numbers are suffering, and they will suffer. It will stay like that, and it will stay red until the CQC decide to come back in, and we have no control over that. So I'm very keen that we, within that exception report framework, that we continue to update everybody and let them know what's going on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stewart. Councillor Abbs.
Yeah, thanks very much, Leader. Page 71 of the report has some influencers dashboard indicators to do with business counts and job density. What I'm looking at, or would like to get some assurity, I guess, is that we're watching this, because if I'm looking at the numbers between 2017-18 and today, we're down 630 on the measures of micro businesses. We're also down 10 on the measures of small businesses. We're down 5 on the measures of large businesses. One of them would have been Bayer, I guess, in this time frame. So yeah, that would be true. And the only upside is the medium size, which is up by 5, if I'm looking over those. Now, as a businessman, that kind of reflects pretty poorly on how we're doing from a business basis. The council may not have seen a change in receipts yet because empty buildings still pay the business rates. We get that. But these indicators seem to show that the business in West Berkshire is weakening, and it's pretty much a constant trend, except for one segment. That was the first. I'm not sure who can give me some assurity here, or whether you've noticed yourselves, but I'd like to get some comment on that, please, if I may. The job density, if we look at 17, 18 to 20, well, it's only 19, 20, so the kind of a different measure in there for some reason. But what's it? That's even that showing a downward trend, even though we've got many more people living in the area. So, I mean, you get it, all right? We always talk about business being the driver of the economy, and, people, yes, they contribute when they live here, but they should be contributing to businesses in the economy. So anyway, and then the second one, unless you want to take it in 2 parts, is on page 80. Sorry, just let me scroll down there for a second. Apologies. Here it is. What was it caught my eye? Yeah, that was it. The influencer measure dashboard, current versus its environment, is the activity of people. And the one group, again, is the drop in the under 16s, which is then again reasonably considerable quarter on quarter. Why do we think that is? I mean, we've got an aging population, so I'd expect that to go up a little bit. But have we really got less young people as well, even though the population has grown? The time frame isn't that big. It can't all be they're on the virtual world, because they were in the virtual world in 2021 and before. So what's causing that, do we think? Or is that just the lack of facilities? Just questions I'd love some answers to, please.
I'm going to go to Councillor McKinnon.
Thanks. I can certainly deal with the first couple of those questions. Your first question was you wanted some assurance on, are we watching this? Are we monitoring the business counts? I think by definition, given that it's a KPI in this report, we are watching it. The fact that we're talking about it here. In terms of the trends, I mean, if you look at when those business counts begin to tail off, it really does coincide very neatly with the pandemic, and it's perhaps not entirely unsurprising that we see that. I know that COVID often gets the blame for a lot of things, but if you're talking about the amount of micro and small businesses that are in operation, I think that has to have some effect. In terms of job density, I completely agree with you. I think we need a much better job density in West Berkshire. And that's why I look forward to you supporting our plans for the London Road Industrial Estate. The whole point of which, well, you laugh, but you're absolutely right. You've nailed it on the head. The whole point of which is to create hundreds of high quality jobs in growing sectors in this economy for exactly what you've just mentioned. So look forward to working together with you in the future.
Yeah, Leader, I need to come back on the use of COVID as a measure here. I said 27, 2018. Nobody even heard of. I'm comparing that quarter, that year rather, to 2023, and it's a downward trend from then. It's not a tail off since 2020. It started in 2017, 18, way before COVID came. So thank you, but that actually didn't give me the assurity I was hoping for, because you seem to want to blame COVID for something that isn't apparent really in those numbers to the degree that you're indicating. But thank you.
Well, we'll just need to agree to disagree. I mean, you just eyeball the graph. You see it's a very small decline all the way up to 2019.
Okay, sorry.
20. I mean,
2020 was 7,870.
I didn't interrupt you, Councillor Abs. You go from 8,060 in 2017-18
yes,
to 7,950. Yes, it's a decline, but it's not as much of a decline. We're now down to 7,400. If you're looking at that decline there, I can't see.
I'm not, and I specifically said 27-18 and 2022 numbers. I didn't even mention 2020, but if you want to start with 2020, it was 7,870 and it's dropped to 7,430.
That's right.
Yeah, okay. Are you blaming that all on COVID? Because actually, it's a trend from 8,060 pretty consistently. It's a slightly bigger drop off. But we've had a bounce back in 2021.
Your definition of consistent is very different to mine. It is almost the flat.
Let's just agree to disagree.
movement. Well, I think that's fine, but it's almost a
Okay.
flat movement until COVID hits, and you can just eyeball the graphic.
Okay, thank you both. Councillor Abbs, your second point, I think you said page 80, but I'm looking at page 80. And sorry, could you repeat the question? Because I'm trying to make it work to page 80. Sorry, and it may.
It says page 80 on my document I'm looking at, so.
Oh, right.
It's the
Councillor
graph.
Bowick,
do you know where you are?
I think Councillor Abbs there's quite a few, there's
okay.
quite a few loudspeaker microphones on here. I think Councillor Abbs is referring to item 44, where he's specifically referring, I think, to the change of attendance by under 16s at our leisure centres, comparing Q2 21 with Q2 22-23. It's less than a 2% fall. Not sure if it's statistically significant. Maybe we'd look at a longer term trend.
Okay, and that's something perhaps you could take away and
Yeah,
have a conversation with.
Happy to.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Dillon.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. The first one's a question for information. On the exception report around the environment about maintaining an acceptable level of litter, detritus and graffiti. I wonder how is that measured in practice? And then is it only looking at West Berkshire owned land? So, for example, in Thatcham, we've increased the litter picking from our grounds maintenance contract, but that involves us litter picking on areas outside of the park, which technically are West Berkshire highways, but you know it's in our town, and we're going to try and make the town as neat and tidy as possible. So I'm just intrigued that it says the latest survey hadn't been done because priorities had gone up into other places. So yeah, a general question around what are you looking at there? And then are you also then reporting on maybe improvements that parish councils have delivered? And that we all want our district to be clean and tidy, so.
I'm going to go over to Councillor Arderwater there. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Leader. Good point, Councillor. And I believe, and I'm reasonably confident, that this is purely looking at roads, public highways, and pavements alongside that. So I'm fairly confident it will not include playing fields, regardless of who owns them or is responsible for them. There is a big national methodology of assessing average number of pieces of litters, but yes, it's roads and pavements and the public highway.
Thank you for that. If I can move on to, I mean, Councillor Bridgman would expect me to comment on page 89 of the printed papers. The average number of days taken to make a full decision on new housing benefit claims. I can see that it's going in the right direction, but it's still above the target of less than 19 days. And this department's so crucial to individuals in the district because, you know, all of their claims come through and, you know, we see here that again, it's now got impact because of the increase in the cost of living and processing those claims. So really, I'm after an assurance that we are prioritising the resource of that department, given its impact directly to residents and what they have in their pocket. So I'm after some assurance, I think.
It's actually Councillor Wollaston.
Just Councillor Bridgman over the years we've
Oh, right,
discussed
okay.
it. That's what I meant.
Okay, Councillor Wollaston.
Thank you, Leader. This obviously are Q2 figures. The Q3 figures, when they come out, will show a significant improvement, and we have put more staff into it to solve the problem already.
That's excellent. Thank you, Councillor Wollaston. And again, the problem with these reports is because they do have a time lag. The planning one, for example, there are a number of planning areas that haven't hit their target. But when you read the remedial action, it talks about a recruitment campaign. And so I just wondered, could we have a general update of within that, have you now recruited or where are you in relation to what was written in these papers? And then also in the targets for the planning ones, it says greater than 90% England average, greater than 86% England average, greater than 90% England average. But in the documentation afterwards, it says that we won't be designated for poor performance because we're higher than the respective national measures of 60 and 70%. So is that what people are currently achieving rather than what their target is? Because that is not the same as the target on the front page.
Thanks, Councillor Dillon. In the absence of Councillor Sumner, I'm going to go to Eric Owens. Eric, over to you. Eric, you need to put the mic on.
Perfect, thank you. In regards to recruitment, yes, we're about to go out and advertise for posts. I think it's about 5 or 6 posts across the development management and SIL team. The hope is we'll be able to fill those posts probably by March's time, looking at advert interview and then recruitment to post. So we're in the process of doing that.
So would it be fair to say we're probably expecting Q3 figures to be similar to Q2 because you didn't have the staffing in place during Q3?
I think there's a mixture of factors going on here, more than just staff. It's about processes and procedures, and those processes and procedures are being enhanced at the moment. So I'm hopeful that our performance will increase and then that'll be added to when more staff come on board.
Thank you both. Can I go to Councillor Patterson?
Thank you, Leader. I had a further question about the exception reports. Principally, the first one, CFS KPI 039, percentage of children in care where the child has been visited in the past 6 weeks. So I'm wondering what's the impact on children of that 85% figure, which is obviously quite a lot worse than it was for Q1. The reasons talks about vacancies or lack of resource in the FSM team. What's the current number of vacancies in the FSM team? And then also it describes the recruitment challenges that have been found. So what's been done to address them? And then finally, the strategic actions talk about care director upgrade having been delayed. So I'm wondering when that's likely to be completed, if it hasn't already, and what mitigations have been put in place as a result of the delay. Thank you.
Councillor Berwick?
Yeah, thanks, Leader. And thank you, Councillor Patton. Very good questions. Yes, it's. I'm disappointed that we've seen this fall. I am concerned about it. The good thing is that although some children have not received their visits in a timely fashion, they have been visited, and I've been assured that as a consequence of this, no children are in danger. But it's not an issue that we can ignore. And you spoke about recruitment. The exception reports talks about a reduction in resource in the family safeguarding safeguarding teams. We have a challenge across the service in recruitment. Indeed, we are finding there's a national challenge in recruiting social workers. So we in West Berkshire are fishing in the same pool as our neighbours to recruit social workers. We introduced an innovative recruitment and retention scheme some years ago, and since then our neighbours have caught up with us. So we've revisited our recruitment and retention strategy, and there are moves afoot to introduce that as soon as we can. Has to go through the normal processes, and so we'll be looking to improve our recruitment. There are other issues as well that are affecting this, such as the increase in demand. And I'm sorry to bore people with talking about the pandemic, but there is no doubt that the pandemic has had a significant and long-term effect on families. So that's increased the demand coming through the front door, and that rattles on right through the process. There is also an issue with care director. It's in part, it's a procedural problem that is exacerbated by the number of agency workers that we've had to recruit to plug the gaps, not being familiar with with our processes and with the way that care director works around recording visits. So without boring you with detail, there are issues like cloning of visits where a social worker has visited a home where there is more than one child in care, only one gets recorded, things like that. And as soon as the care director problems are resolved, they will be resolved with it. I can't talk about the detail of when that will happen. I think perhaps one of my colleagues can.
Thank you both. Thank you, everybody, for your questions. Councillor Abbs, we have been to you already this evening.
Yeah, that was on the influencer measures. I didn't want to mix it up with the one question I've got on exception reports.
Okay, I will let this one go.
Thank you very much, Leader. Probably Councillor Darwater will answer this. To be clear, I'm talking about the appendix exception report, page 4, which talks about recycling. And the clarification I was hoping to get was that when I look at those numbers, there is a 5% drop, or just over 5%, nearly 6% drop in Q1, but a 33% drop in tonnage in Q2. It says it's explained by the drought, and it gives a link to Let's Recycle as the explanation. But when I go and read the Let's Recycle link, it says the only thing it mentions is 5%, which is more in line with the Q1 number than it is the Q2. It then goes on, well, how are we going to mitigate this? And then talks about pretty much everything except for, getting more people to use the green bin, assuming we have a more normal summer this summer and not another drought. So I'm a little concerned, slightly worried here that we're a bit hoping that this will sort itself out, rather than, we've really looked at this in detail and convinced ourselves, yeah, it definitely was the drought. Because as I say, the evidence doesn't seem to, the evidence I was given doesn't seem to support it. So.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Arderwater.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Abbs. I had a funny feeling you would ask this one. So absolutely, as you're well aware, weather, of course, does influence the numbers each and every year, and some years it's higher and some years it's lower. The one thing I am confident about, not resting and hoping for, is the impact of food waste recycling. And already, as you'll have seen from officers' communications on this, the response to residents of that has been very significant. The additional tonnage from food, together with existing and whether it's hot weather or dry weather, green waste, I'm confident will significantly push our overall number well into the 50% by this time next year. We can and need to be aiming significantly higher still. But given our focus on this, our encouragement to residents and regular messaging, outreach to schools, for example, that is the big opportunity for us to improve the district's performance.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that answer. But my concern is that the target is at 49.5%. So in other words, you're going to, and you've introduced a new service, and therefore the new service target should have been in the 55 to 60% bracket, because the officer is indicating that that's the expectation. So it's kind of, yes, of course you will achieve your target if you don't take the new things into account. We need to keep moving the target up if we've changed the things that are going to contribute to the target. So yeah, well, can we have that moved up, please, so that we really understand what we're doing against not just things we've done, but things we're intending to do.
Indeed, Councillor Abbs, we will be doing that. And of course, as you'll seen, these targets are set annually, and conveniently we're coming up to the end of this year, and there'll be a new target next year. And indeed, I'm keen to say it's stretching us further.
All part of the new council strategy. Okay, members, thank you for the conversations and questions this evening on this. It's to note the progress that West Berkshire Council is making towards delivery of its council strategy. I think we can all recognise that actually there's been strong performance in the core business areas. I think we've seen good results in the majority of the measures relating to the council's priorities. And I think there are remedial actions being put into place where performance is below target. So I'm happy that we've had that conversation this evening to note the report and to move on to item 9. So item 9 this evening is the social value update. I believe Councillor McKinnon is going to introduce this report. It does not require a seconder because it's to note. So over to you, Councillor McKinnon.
Thanks very much, Leader. Members will be aware that the social value policy was adopted by the Executive in November 2021. And it's been a very encouraging start for this policy. To remind you, the policy enables for social value measures like environmental and social benefits to be considered as part of the Council's procurement processes. So that when we award contracts to Council suppliers, the social and environmental impact on the district and its residents has some bearing on the ultimate decision. Now, to date, 73 procurements have been published since that policy was adopted, and I'm happy to say a majority of which, 38, have had social value applied or are having social value applied at this point in time because the procurement's still in progress. 23 of those, so the majority of those have had environmental concerns like carbon footprint applied, and that's to the benefit of local suppliers, all the while remaining compliant with procurement regulations, which we have to take care to do. 9 benefits have been classed as social and 6 have been a mixture of the two, and that gets us to our 38. The appendix to the report, actually, if you've had a chance to read it, it includes some very encouraging examples. That's feedback from service areas about how the benefits of this policy have come about. And it's early days, but we do look forward to seeing even more tangible results in the future. So quite a good news story, I think. And that's it. I'll leave it there.
Thanks, Councillor McKinnon. Members of the Executive, any questions for Councillor McKinnon on this one? Councillor Brooks.
Chairman, it's on the procurement point because although Councillor McKinnon's expanded on that, the report actually says the council has published 73 procurement projects, of which 3 included a specific social value question. So 3 out of 73, I read that. Now, I do a lot of bids and help companies do bids to government through PQQs, RFIs, ITTs. Social value questions are now there. It's difficult for an SME to really understand how they might deliver some social value, corporate social responsibility and the like. So you have to help them in terms of the procurement process, or even something on the website that says, this gives you an idea of what we're looking for, so that the small plumbing concern can say, okay, I can get my head around that. But so I'm caveating that to say we must do it, but we must do it in a way that small businesses can understand how to answer it. But that's telling me we're not asking the question. So what's right and which is wrong? Councillor McKinnon seems to be shaking his head saying I'm wrong in reading it in that way. So I'm confused and expect to see it in every procurement process, because it's all through portals, I would think, nowadays. And you adapt the portal, the questions in the portal. And as I say, you give some explanation of how they can satisfy the question and the challenge.
Thanks, Mr. Brooks. Some pretty good questions there, to be fair. Now, where we say that there's 73 procurements that have been published since the adoption and 3 included a specific social value question, you'll be aware that the volume and the variety of the procurements that the council undertakes is pretty vast. Some of those procurements will have such an element of social and environmental policy attached to it that a specific social value policy question is in there. That's not to say that the others don't have social value considered as part of that process. So you can see we've had 30 or 35 out of the 73 have not had social value applied. And again, there could be a range of reasons for that. Like if it's a very, very minor procurement, or if social value, if there's an environmental and social concern that clearly just isn't applicable, then It's wrong to have a one size fits all approach, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. So no, it's not only 3 have had social value considered, it is 38. But we'll happy to tighten up the wording for next time for you.
Just quickly on that, and thank you for that.
Oh, and I've remembered something else I wanted to say about helping suppliers. The council does run regular meet the supplier events where we do exactly that. So we invite small and medium enterprises in the district to meet with us to explain to them how our procurement process is working, give them a bit of advice as to how they can structure their bids a little bit better. We're not wanting to do you out of a job, of course, but you know so we recognise that, and it is ongoing.
I don't help any company bid to West Berkshire. Let's be clear about that. I think the key thing within social value is whether in the procurement exercise, and the question could be in every one, frankly, Councillor McKinnon, and it's within the weighting of whether it's marked, whether it's scored, or it's just for information, so that the bidder who is scratching their head knows it isn't going to detrimentally affect their marking and their ability to win the contract. If you've got it in, it's going to be in there. If you've got it as a maybe, often it won't be. So it's a bit, some tightening up to be done. You use those words, and I'd like to see that happen. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to be violently disagreeing here. I think overall it's been a very encouraging start, and happy to keep you updated going forward.
Thank you. Councillor Dillon.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Councillor McKinnon, I have read the appendices, and actually that's probably where I think most of this appendices should be in the main report, actually. And that's what I wanted to talk about. I wrote the first ever social value report for Sovereign, along with my colleague Marcus Franks. We locked ourselves in a room at the top of Berkshire House all day, and we're pouring through spreadsheets from across the business. And there's an organisation in particular to housing called HACT, which is the Housing Association Charitable Trust, and they have a social value tool. And over the years, we've worked with those and developed that. But what it creates at the end for you is a financial value of social value. So, you know, if you stop someone from smoking, that's the equivalent benefit to the purse of £40,000. So you can create an actual social value that you can then put in your accounts. Now, from reading this report, what I don't get is, are there areas of the council not engaging? Are there, you know, because we can see here which category social value has been applied to. But, you know, so do we have an issue with energy and agency, and we need to do more work with that team? So actually, I'm going to support what you said, Councillor McKinnon. It's a promising start, but I think the report needs more detail. I think it should break down the amount of volunteer hours. It should record the amount of CO tonnage saved, real attributable facts that we can have in our social value report, so that we know what we're actually delivering, rather than just a list of projects. You know, it says we've done volunteer days. Was that 1? Was it 100? So I just think some more detail, and as you get more effect to doing this as a council, then I'm sure we'll get more detail in the reports as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Dillon. Anything you want to add to that, Councillor?
Yeah, just a couple of things. It's nice to hear that story. Sadly, I never got to meet Marcus, and from talking to people who did, then I'm very sorry that was the case. But it's quite nice to hear that. I think, again, we're not going to be horribly disagreeing. I mean, the conclusion of the report does say that we do need to focus more questions on council priorities and make some, maybe not the specific ones that you mentioned, but it's early days in the policy. We are not closed-minded to say, oh, well, this is what we've been doing for the last 18 months, so we're going to stick to it. You know, it will be defined and developed, and I'm happy to hear that you're supportive of it.
Okay, thank you, everybody. The report is to note, so there's no further action on that this evening, and therefore can we move to item 10, which is our members' questions. I would like to thank all those members who have submitted a question for this evening's executive meeting. Again, in the absence of our portfolio holder for planning, transport and countryside, a written response will be provided to the members for question A within 5 working days. Please note that there's a time limit. I don't think we're going to need it, so I'm not going to keep going with that piece of the information. Can I therefore go to Councillor Marino to answer Councillor Jeff Brooks' question B on the agenda?
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Councillor Brooks, for your question. I'm afraid to say that you are actually wrong on 2 counts. Firstly, council wasn't informed about the changes, rather council resolved the changes. And second, these changes to an outside body can certainly be made mid-term, as you put it. Indeed, it's explicitly recognised in the rules of the Thames Valley Police and Crime Panel, and I quote, "An authority may decide in accordance with its procedures to remove its member from the panel at any time." So to repeat, Councillor Doherty, which I know it's been spelled incorrectly, did not replace Councillor Rolls on anything. Council did, and Council had every authority to do so mid-term or otherwise. Do you have a supplementary?
You quote from the Thames Valley Police panel. It is a panel, it's not a joint committee. And
Point of order, Leader. The Thames Valley Police Committee is definitely a joint committee, and I'll look to the monitoring officer for confirmation.
Right, thank you. That's very helpful because I can now quote the Constitution to you. The executive may establish joint arrangements with one or more local authority to exercise functions which are executive functions. Except as set out below, the executive may only appoint executive members to a joint committee. Executive members, I'm reading the Constitution here, may only appoint executive members to a joint committee. And those members need not actually reflect the political composition of the local authority. We're not talking about the fact that the Thames Valley Police, it says you can change a member, but here on a joint committee, it should have been an executive member.
I'm going to go to the monitoring officer.
Well, if you'd let me just develop so the monitoring officer's got all the points I'm trying to make. The executive may appoint members to a joint committee from outside the executive, where the joint committee has functions for only part of the area of local authority. That wouldn't be the case here. And that area is smaller than 2/5 of the authority. I think you have actually done something you weren't entitled to do.
Okay, so I'm taking your supplementary question as, have you done something you were not entitled to do? Councillor Marino.
I mean, based on my conversations with the monitoring officer, I'm confident that all decisions have been lawful and they were done by council rather than you, but I'm happy to refer to Sarah this evening if she wants to clarify.
I think you've answered the supplementary question. Do you wish to give clarification?
No, all I can say is that this has been looked at extensively as a result of correspondence that we have received, and I am quite satisfied that the council acted appropriately in making the changes that
You haven't heard the last of this. I will be
Thank you,
taking this up with the chief executive.
Thank you, Councillor Brooks. Your question has been asked and answered. Therefore, I haven't got a question for you, Councillor.
No, I've got. I wanted to ask you a question, Leader, which was just around the process of not. I know that there were some public questions and a member's question where the portfolio holder wasn't here to answer it. I just wondered, why were you not able to answer it on their behalf as the leader of the council?
Because as an executive, we've taken the decision as far as supplementaries are concerned, it's best coming from the portfolio holder.
Thank you.
Therefore, the business of this evening's meeting has been concluded. I'd like to thank everybody for their attendance, and I will therefore close this meeting. Thank you all.